April 19, 1775, before the sun had fully risen over the quiet countryside of Massachusetts, church bells began ringing across nearby towns. Farmers left their fields, blacksmiths abandoned their forges. Shopkeepers locked their doors. Within hours, ordinary men had transformed into soldiers. Most of them wore no uniforms. Many carried hunting muskets instead of military rifles. Some marched in worn leather boots, while others fought in simple work clothes. Yet history would remember them by something far more permanent than their clothing: their surnames. Today, millions of Americans proudly carry family names without realizing those same names once appeared on fragile military rolls, handwritten enlistment papers, pension records, and payroll lists created during the American Revolution. Some of those records have survived for nearly 2.5 centuries. Inside dusty archives are names that fought at Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Saratoga, Trenton, Yorktown, and countless forgotten battlefields. The remarkable question is simple: could your surname be one of them? The Revolutionary War was not fought by professional soldiers alone. It was fought by farmers, teachers, merchants, fishermen, millers, carpenters, and immigrants from across Europe who believed the 13 colonies should govern themselves. Every regiment kept records. Every captain submitted muster rolls. Every company listed the men who served. Those lists became one of America's greatest historical treasures. Unlike legends passed through generations, these documents recorded real people with real surnames. Some names appeared only once. Others appeared hundreds of times across different colonies. Entire families enlisted together. Brothers marched beside brothers. Fathers served alongside sons. In several cases, 3 generations from the same family eventually became connected to the struggle for American independence. Understanding these surnames means understanding where early America came from. Many Patriot surnames originated in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, France, and the Netherlands, long before arriving in North America. As families settled across New England, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, and the Carolinas, their names became part of colonial history. When revolution finally arrived, those same names filled military rosters. Our journey begins with one of the most recognizable surnames in American history. Washington, long before George Washington became the first president of the United States. The Washington family name had already existed in England for centuries. The surname originated from northern England, deriving from an estate whose name meant the settlement of Wassa's people. Members of the Washington family migrated to Virginia during the 17th century. George Washington inherited not only land and wealth, but also a reputation for leadership. When the Continental Congress selected him as commander-in-chief in June 1775, few realized they were choosing the man whose surname would become one of the most famous in the world. Military payrolls, correspondence, officer commissions, and wartime reports repeatedly carried the Washington name throughout the Revolution. But George was not the only Washington involved. Relatives, cousins, and extended family members also served in different military and civilian roles, supporting the Patriot cause. Today, countless descendants continue researching whether their branch connects to the same colonial Washington family. The second surname appears throughout New England militia records: Adams. Few names influenced the American Revolution more deeply than Adams. Derived from the biblical name Adam, the surname spread throughout England before arriving in colonial Massachusetts. John Adams became one of the loudest voices supporting independence. His cousin Samuel Adams inspired resistance against British taxation through speeches, newspaper articles, and political organization. Yet beyond these famous figures, Revolutionary War records reveal dozens of ordinary Adams soldiers serving in Massachusetts regiments. Muster rolls preserved by state archives list Adams family members in artillery companies, infantry regiments, and local militias. Many fought without ever becoming famous. Some never returned home. Their names remain preserved only because military clerks carefully copied each surname onto company rolls. The third surname carries Scottish roots, Campbell. The Campbell clan ranks among Scotland's oldest and largest Highland families. During the 18th century, thousands of Scottish immigrants crossed the Atlantic. Many settled in North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and New York. Interestingly, not every Campbell supported the same side. Some remained loyal to Britain, others became determined patriots. Military records show Campbell soldiers serving in continental regiments from several colonies. The surname appeared repeatedly in pension applications, submitted decades after the war. These applications often describe battles, injuries, family members, and places of residence, giving historians remarkable insight into ordinary patriot lives. The fourth surname is deeply connected to Irish immigration. Murphy originally derived from the Gaelic O Murchada, meaning descendant of Murchad. The Murphy family name became widespread throughout Ireland long before the American colonies declared independence. Irish immigrants arrived in increasing numbers during the 18th century. Many sought farmland and economic opportunity. When revolution erupted, Irish-born settlers often supported colonial independence. Murphy soldiers served in militia companies from Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. Although few became nationally famous, local county records preserve evidence of their service. Tax records, enlistment papers, pension files, and land grants help historians reconstruct their stories today. The fifth surname became synonymous with courage. Greene, Nathaniel Greene, remains one of the Revolution's greatest military commanders. Born in Rhode Island, Greene overcame physical limitations and limited formal education to become one of George Washington's most trusted generals. His campaigns across the southern colonies exhausted British forces through strategy rather than overwhelming numbers. But the Greene surname extended beyond Nathaniel himself. Company rosters list numerous Greene soldiers from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. The surname traces back to Old English, originally describing someone who lived near a village green or grassy area. Its simple origin hides an extraordinary revolutionary legacy. Another surname appears throughout Virginia's military history, Lee. The Lee family belonged to Virginia's colonial elite. Richard Henry Lee signed the Declaration of Independence. His resolution calling for independence fundamentally changed American history. Other Lee family members served politically, diplomatically, and militarily throughout the conflict. The surname itself originated in Old English, generally referring to a woodland clearing or meadow. By the 18th century, Lee families had spread across several colonies. Military payrolls record soldiers named Lee serving in infantry companies, cavalry units, and local defense militias. Some were directly related to the famous Virginia family. Others shared only the surname. Genealogists today often spend years separating these different Lee family branches. The seventh surname reflects German immigration into colonial America. Miller, derived from the occupation of operating grain mills. Miller became one of the most common surnames among German-speaking immigrants settling Pennsylvania. Known as the Pennsylvania Germans, many farming communities maintained their language and traditions while gradually becoming loyal supporters of the Patriot cause. Military rolls reveal hundreds of Miller soldiers serving in Pennsylvania line regiments. Some fought under General Washington during the harsh winter at Valley Forge. Others later participated in campaigns stretching from New Jersey to the Carolinas. Because Miller is an occupational surname, unrelated families often share the name, making genealogy especially challenging. Researchers frequently rely upon church records, land deeds, wills, and military pensions to distinguish one Miller family from another. As the war expanded beyond New England, More surnames appeared across military records. Some belonged to famous officers, others belonged to men history almost forgot, yet every name represented an individual who accepted enormous personal risk. If captured, patriots could lose property, some lost businesses, others saw their homes destroyed. Families were separated for years. Disease claimed more soldiers than combat. Still, enlistment records continued growing. Each carefully written surname became evidence that ordinary people had chosen to stand against one of the world's most powerful empires. These records now provide descendants with something priceless: proof. Proof that a family member stood at a defining moment in American history. Proof that a surname appearing on a modern mailbox may once have appeared on an 18th century muster roll carried across muddy battlefields. And as historians continued examining surviving revolutionary records, they discovered even more remarkable surnames, families whose sacrifices shaped the birth of a nation, but whose stories have remained hidden for generations. The surviving records of the American Revolution reveal something extraordinary. While history often remembers famous generals and political leaders, the overwhelming majority of patriots were ordinary men whose names rarely appeared in newspapers or history books. Yet without their service, the revolution could never have succeeded. Every faded muster roll tells the same story. Behind each surname was a father, a son, a husband, a neighbor, or a young farmer who chose to risk everything for an uncertain future. The next surname appears repeatedly throughout New England military records. Brown is one of the oldest and most widespread English surnames, originally referring to a person's brown hair, complexion, or clothing. By the 18th century, Brown families had settled across Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island during the Revolution. Hundreds of Browns enlisted in local militia companies before joining Continental Army regiments. Some defended Boston during the Siege of Boston. Others marched with Washington through New Jersey during the desperate winter campaigns. Because Brown became such a common surname, historians often rely on town records, church registers, and pension applications to identify individual soldiers. Many descendants today discover multiple Brown patriots within the same family tree. Another surname carries deep English roots: Clark. Derived from the occupation of a clerk or scholar, Clark families became well established throughout colonial America long before the Revolution. Military rolls show Clark soldiers serving in nearly every colony. Some acted as officers responsible for maintaining military records. Others fought as infantrymen, scouts, or artillerymen. The surname appears repeatedly in land grant records awarded to Revolutionary veterans after the war. These grants encouraged settlement across the expanding American frontier, allowing patriot families to build new communities beyond the original 13 colonies. The 10th surname reflects one of the oldest family names in Britain: Taylor. Originally identifying someone who worked as a tailor, the Taylor surname spread throughout England before arriving in America during the 17th century. Taylor soldiers served in Virginia, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York regiments. Several family members enlisted together, creating military traditions that continued through later American conflicts. Surviving payroll records reveal that many Taylor soldiers remained in service for years, enduring disease, hunger, and harsh winters while receiving very little pay. Despite these hardships, they continued serving until victory was finally achieved. The 11th surname is strongly associated with Scottish immigration: Stuart. The Stuart family name traces back to the Royal House of Stuart in Scotland, where it originally described a royal steward responsible for managing estates. Large numbers of Stuart families emigrated to North America before the Revolution. Like many Scottish families, their loyalties were divided. Some remained loyal to the British Crown. Others embraced the Patriot cause completely. Military pension files reveal Stuart veterans describing battles fought in New York, Pennsylvania, and the Carolinas. These first-hand accounts provide historians with invaluable descriptions of daily life inside the Continental Army. The 12th surname reflects the growing influence of Welsh immigrants, Jones. Derived from the given name John, Jones became one of the most common surnames among Welsh settlers. By 1775, Jones families could be found throughout nearly every colony. Revolutionary records list hundreds of soldiers named Jones serving in infantry companies, cavalry units, naval crews, and state militias. One of the most famous figures associated with the name was Naval Commander John Paul Jones, whose daring victories demonstrated that the young American Navy could challenge British warships on the open sea. His victories inspired patriots across the colonies and transformed the Jones surname into a lasting symbol of determination. The 13th surname reveals America's diverse colonial population. Schmidt, often later anglicized as Smith, German immigrants frequently adapted their surnames after arriving in English-speaking colonies. The German surname Schmidt, meaning blacksmith, often became Smith in official records. This simple change creates one of the greatest challenges facing modern genealogists. A family that arrived from Germany as Schmidt may appear in revolutionary records as Smith only a few years later. Military rosters contain hundreds of Smith soldiers, making careful research essential when tracing ancestry. Land records, church books, immigration lists, and probate documents often provide the missing evidence connecting these families. The 14th surname became closely tied to frontier settlements. Walker, originally describing someone who cleaned and softened wool cloth, Walker evolved into one of Britain's most recognizable surnames. Walker families settled throughout Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Frontier militia units often relied upon experienced hunters and woodsmen. Many Walkers possessed exactly those skills. Their knowledge of forests, rivers, and mountain trails proved invaluable during campaigns in the southern colonies and western frontier. Some later received land grants in Kentucky and Ohio as recognition for their military service. The 15th surname remains one of the most recognizable in America. Johnson, meaning son of John. Johnson developed independently in both England and Scandinavia before becoming widespread across colonial America. Military roles from nearly every state include Johnson soldiers. Some served only a few months. Others remained with the Continental Army until the war ended. Their names appear on enlistment contracts, payroll records, pension files, hospital registers, and post-war land applications. Together, these surviving documents preserve an extraordinary record of sacrifice. When the Treaty of Paris officially ended the Revolutionary War in 1783, the United States emerged as an independent nation. But the story of these surnames did not end there. Veterans returned home, some rebuilt farms destroyed during the war, others established new towns on the frontier. Many raised families whose descendants spread across every state in America. Over generations, memories faded, old military papers disappeared into attics, family Bibles were lost. Stories passed from grandparents to grandchildren gradually became shorter until only a surname remained. Today, genealogy has given those forgotten stories new life. Millions of revolutionary records have been preserved in national archives, state archives, historical societies, libraries, and digitized collections. Researchers compare military rolls with census records, church registers, wills, tax lists, cemetery records, and immigration documents to reconstruct family histories that seemed permanently lost. Finding a familiar surname inside an 18th century muster roll does not automatically prove direct descent. Many unrelated families shared common names. Only careful genealogical research can establish a documented connection between a modern family and a revolutionary patriot. Still, these records provide something remarkable. They remind us that history was not written only by presidents and generals. It was written by thousands of ordinary families whose names quietly filled military rosters, one line at a time. Each surname represented a decision to leave home, to face uncertainty, to endure hardship, and to fight for an idea that would eventually become the United States of America. Perhaps somewhere among those faded pages lies a familiar family name, a surname passed down for generations. A name still spoken today without realizing it once stood beside thousands of others during one of history's greatest struggles for independence. The ink may have faded, the paper may have aged. But those names, and the legacy they represent, continue to survive, reminding every generation that history is often far closer than we imagine.